It's week 3 in the UFL, and we're going to see who's the pretenders and who's the contenders this week in some very vital matchups early on in the season, plus a few newsworthy pieces and transactions you don't want to miss our discussion on, as Luke Miller from Stay the Stallions, our own PFN man himself, is joining us for all things UFL Podcast. This is episode 81 of the UFL Podcast, and it starts right now.
1, 2, 3.
Welcoming you into the latest episode of the UFL Podcast. I am Zach Kyleman hosting once again this week. The Revs busy as hell in real life, no curtains, so we have to bring in another one of our fantastic personalities from PFN. It is Luke Miller himself joining us, Stay the Stallions Podcast host and creator himself joining us, and of course, diehard Birmingham Stallions fan. It's funny, Luke, we don't have much Stallions representation on this show. Plenty on, of course, ATU with yourself being on there, but hey, it's nice to mix things up. 2 weeks of 12-0 and now 10-0. I like the little break. I get a little spacing. It's okay.
Well, I can act like ref and sort of do the 12-0 thing, but in my case, it might actually be true.
For your sake, I actually buy the hype. That's the difference.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm a little
and
more
like you said,
up.
I haven't been on here. Well, no really Stallions person's been on here, so I've got years of lack of Stallions promotion to make up for in one episode. So no, just kidding. I won't shove it down people's throats too hard, but I did at least leave the flag up, for the show.
Oh, of course. Hey, if I can look like I'm a freaking super fan over in Detroit, clearly you can bring on a Stallions flag and an iron cap, by the way, extra bonus points for the AAF representation. Rest in peace, AAF and the Birmingham Iron. But yeah, it's a great day. It's really into full swing of the season now, Luke. Week 3. It's every time we do a new season of this stuff, doesn't matter what league, it goes faster. It's almost like aging as you go. It just goes faster because you're having fun. And it's been a great first 2 weeks, especially for yourself. Me, I could do without last week, but you know what? Birmingham's pretty good. We fell into similar issues as we have previous. It's okay. I get why we lost. 7 sacks, Taco Charlton, terrifying EJ Perry. I understand. I have accepted this. This is my acceptance to week 2, and my final door is shut.
Yeah, as someone who supports the Stallions, I guess I'm a little biased, but if I was in your shoes, I wouldn't be too hard on the Panthers for losing that game. The Stallions, in my opinion, came into the season as the team to beat, and I think over the first 2 weeks, obviously the Brahmas have had an impressive start to the season too, but I think the Stallions still, again, at least in my opinion, kind of look like the team to beat until proven otherwise. And so Michigan hung in there with them. It was a close game. It came down to the wire. It wasn't certainly by any means a blowout or something like that. And so Michigan certainly held their own. They just got a few things to figure out, especially like you said, with the offensive line and the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, and they might have some more questions as we'll talk about later coming into their matchup this week with the Houston Roughnecks. Birmingham gets to take on a fan favorite in Memphis this week, and they'll be fun discussing that. Always great to have those little rivalries and the chippiness with those two, and not too far of a distance there for them to travel. Good crowd, by the way. I checked Ticketmaster on this. It looks like a decent crowd's forming over there at Protective Stadium. I'm looking forward to seeing it on TV. They keep opening sections, so good signs. You're talking good signs?
Yeah, I think so. I think, it's you always want more. It's like we could have 20,000 fans, and I would still think we should have at least 25, But I think all things considered so far, it looks like it's going to be a good start. For people that don't know, Alabama, the Crimson Tide, they have what they call A-Day on Saturday as well, which is their spring football game. And in other years, it might not be such a big deal, but this year is the first year with a brand new coach post Nick Saban. So everybody wants to go to that. Everybody wants to see what the team looks like, how it kind of operates with the new coach and that sort of thing. And the game's at 3, so it's not out of the question that you could kind of sort of do both. But of course, that would take a little bit of commitment to try and make that work. So there's always competition. There's always events happening in all of these markets at any given moment. But it's kind of a tough thing to go up against for your first game for the Stallions. But that being considered, I think things are trending in a good direction. It seems like we're going to have a pretty solid turnout, all things considered, hopefully on Saturday night.
If this was a UFL sponsored show, I would say pound down a Zoa Energy on the way back from A-Day, and you can get yourself really geared up for a second dose of football action.
That's right.
I'm telling you. Look,
buy a 6-pack of Zoa, and you'll be able to make the trip from Tuscaloosa to Birmingham.
This show is not sponsored by Zoa, by the way. I have to make sure that is put out there. I like Rockstar better anyhow. Anyway, we got a show to do. We got some stuff to get through, as always. Plugs and the usual beginnings, as you and I may know, being podcasting regulars and veterans ourselves. Let's do this. Socials. Hey, have you followed us on social? And I'm talking both of us, by the way. Both are great shows. Stevie T has us ranked top 5 in the rankings. You got to check out tops in all things UFL and State of the Stallions. So yeah, UFL Podcast at UFL Podcast on your favorite social media platform. And then Luke, I will say it's a bit mirror, but it's SOT Stallions these days, from what I can tell, is where.
That's right.
So,
yeah. I wanted to make it at State of the Stallions, but unfortunately on X, it was just slightly too long. So I had to come up with some way to abbreviate it. So I just went with SOT Stallions.
You got to work with Elon a little bit. It's okay.
I know.
He can only give you so much freedom on that.
Yeah,
platform.
I'm sure if I paid for like the extra premium version of X, I could maybe get my full handle, but I wasn't prepared to do that. So
seriously though, go follow this guy on social media platforms. He's been, dude, you push out a ton of content on a regular basis. I sit here and I sweat because I'm like, oh man, the amount of story content. It is good content for Stallions fans out there. Luke does a great job.
It might be too much. I don't know. It might be too much. My wife might say that I need to scale it back a little bit, but we're in the middle of the season, like you said. So there's no turning back now. Yeah,
she'll understand. I think she will. Anyway, other plugs, by the way. Hey, want to support the show? Breaking Tea, one of the official third-party platforms that the USFL and now the UFL has been using for merch. Well, we got a deal for you that helps us out. 10% off your purchase at Breaking Tea, and that's for any product on there. They do great UFL merch, but they got other stuff from various leagues. Use the code USFL Podcast on Breaking Tea to get 10% off your entire order at checkout. That supports our entire PFN plethora of shows and the website, which trust me, you're going to love the tea, and trust me, we're going to love that you helped us out, because really it means a lot. By the way, as well, summer stock, we are getting in the early stages of planning. Stay tuned for that. We will have a show for you. The question is, where at specifically in St. Louis, as we have been showing you in Arlington? That is a challenge. So stay tuned for that. We will get that sorted out. And finally, big announcement for us that we did last year, and this is going to be something we talk about with summer stock anyway. So last year we did a little bit of we did the Ducky Collection version 1.0. We sold Ducky merch. As you can see, Luke is one of the proud members of the 1.0 club of Ducky merch. Legend Ducky was at the time, also had a cap for that, and we donated to Feeding America with the funds that you gave us to donate to Feeding America. Well, guess what? We're doing it again. Version 2 merch exclusively for this year is coming out. I have the link in the description for you. Go to this link. It's our shop, but you buy this merch, that money goes directly to Feeding America from those purchases. And trust me, the merch looks pretty sweet even year over year. So definitely want to pick it up. Luke, I don't know about you. I'm picking up one of the sweatshirts with like the legend, with kind of like the text on the side that they got going on the sleeve, and the patch on like one of the breastplates here. It's going to be really nice. Looks really nice.
Ducky's been working overtime on his new merch drop, and so it looks really good. Definitely check it out.
But yeah, check it out. Support a good cause, and hey, get some sweet swag while you're at it from the community legend himself on our PFN squad. Anyway, let's get into this thing. Kind of already, I guess, dived into our week 2 discussion as we did, at least final thoughts in closing the chapter. Let's talk about some things that have been going on midweek in particular, and some big stories. I'll admit one of them, I feel bad because we didn't get to it on ATU. We actually, again, no curtains. We really wanted to get this on ATU. We just kind of got it lost in translation. So let's just kick into this right now because I feel like it's pretty important. So UFL PA, formerly the USFL PA, they're the guys that are now running the collective on the collective bargaining agreement for the players and helping with increasing salaries and getting benefits to the players. Unfortunately, they had to file a grievance this past week on a fact that player of the week bonuses, Luke, are not being paid out, which is funny because if you go on their social, they clearly posted on their CBA details that player of the week bonuses are supposed to be paid. It's $1,000 a week for the player of the week, and no dice, no money's been paid out. No graphics have been posted. It seems like the PA's trying to figure out what the heck's going on with this because they said they agreed with this at the bargaining table. What's the deal? Because I'm trying to ask the same thing. Why is this not being executed?
Yeah, it's a little odd. I know with the USFL, they would have a fan vote player of the week on X after each week. And so I was kind of keeping my eye out after week 1 to see maybe if they decided to do something similar, kind of carry that over from the USFL side this year, but obviously they did not. So after week 1, I just kind of thought, well, maybe just the league will sort of deliberate and decide who that player of the week is. And then kind of waited to hear maybe an announcement. Never heard anything, and I honestly kind of forgot about it after week 1. I was like, I guess it's just they're going to do it in house or whatever. And then then this came out from the PA, and obviously we're not privy to all the details. We don't know everything that's going on behind the scenes, but it's definitely unfortunate because I mean, from my angle, I'm just not sure like why it's not happening. I mean, it seems like something that you would want to do. Even without the bonuses and stuff, just to drum up interest in the league. Like, why not have a player of the week? Why not highlight those guys who are balling out and bringing attention to your league? And then on top of that, though, obviously there's the added perspective of like, well, these guys are supposed to be being compensated. Whoever the players of the weeks are, we don't know, but whoever they were, they're supposed to be being compensated for it. And the fact that they're not is kind of concerning and frustrating. I mean, it's not like these guys are breaking the bank, so I mean, $1,000, I mean, that's a nice little bonus for some of these guys, and it's an incentive that the PA worked to get as part of this CBA. So kind of again, I don't want to come down too hard on the league because I don't know all the details behind the scenes, and we're sort of maybe getting one side of the story, but it's not a great look for it to have to come out this way.
No, and I think, look, you're putting the right portions out here is that we don't have every detail when it comes to bargaining agreement or even grievances or PA issues. It's a back and forth. That's how this always works. The PA is going to put out their side of the story and what they are working on to resolve said side of the story. The league might, but usually a lot of times union issues, you don't always hear as much from the league office. They kind of try and keep it in-house. Even that's NFL side too. That's not just like a UFL, USFL PA thing. The NFL is similar. They might put a statement out if it's really severe, but they generally try and play it out behind the scenes. I'm not really sure what to make of this. Now, last year, we've seen the details. There weren't really player of the week bonuses last year for either league, really. The USFL did 3 player of the week awards per week, and that was over the last 2 seasons, offensive, defensive, and special teams. So in theory, if that was what the original agreement was, is that we would see that repeat, that's $3,000 a week bonus add-on accolades included with your standard salary that you get per week. Now, I don't know what the deal is there. I mean, yes, $3,000 a week is an extra expense for a league that with the merger we've seen does have some consolidated costs going into that to try for survivability, but I don't know if it's too much of a stretch to add on to that. And I don't know what the holdup is. So, I'm with you. I am like you. I forgot about the votes. I forgot about those graphics. And sure enough, week 3 is now rolling around and even the PA is like, okay, we need to say something because apparently this is getting a little out of hand to them. And this is a story we're just going to have to follow along because look, these players are making good money to where it's like for you and I, Luke, that's a year's of salary that we can live off of in 10 weeks if you're active and playing and starting. But still, these guys do get themselves beaten up every week on a regular basis, and good awards should be awarded. Not to mention player of the week, that highlights good players that maybe the NFL might want to take a look at for a league that's trying to push guys up a level. Doesn't hurt to show off people that are, playing better than the rest on a regular basis too.
Yeah, it's like, for example, I mean, after week one, I mean, Jake Bates got a lot of attention. He didn't necessarily maybe need more attention, but it would just been another way. Like if there was a special teams player of the week and they did it for each, sort of offense, defense, special teams, obviously week one, like it would have been him. And that would have just been another way to sort of you could have a press release. You could sort of promote it and say, Jake Bates was our special teams player of the week. Here were his heroics. He's getting a bonus, like because of what he did. Like it just seems like another way to sort of highlight and promote the league. And again, some of the, people that you want to turn into household names. Like nobody knew Jake Bates going into that week one game. Now, like millions of people know who Jake Bates is, right? And so it's just another way to promote those guys. So I don't know. I just don't really, I was fine with them not doing it by vote because you can tell if you just look at attendance, right, that the fan bases in this league are not everybody's on equal footing. So it's not really like, if there was a player, let's say from Michigan, like Jake Bates did such a heroic thing. I think he could have won a vote regardless. But like on a different week, if a Michigan player has a really good game, but a St. Louis player also has a pretty good game, like who's going to win the fan vote? We kind of know, you know what I mean? So I was fine with them maybe not doing it by vote, but I just assumed that meant they were going to have some other way of doing it. But apparently it's not happening at all. At least, that's sort of what we're hearing, which again, I think is unfortunate.
Yeah, that's interesting because I mean, fan vote is a little bit for money's sake. Once you add money, I think fan vote doesn't work because you're gonna have guys that are gonna really be frustrated that they might have had a better performance, but it's because of like, imagine if a St. Louis player gets on a vote, and I'm not saying that's look. I'm glad the St. Louis fan base has more fans, but online fan base dictating someone getting paid money is a little bit weary. So my solution I would have thought would have been like you have the PA members vote every week. And I don't know if that was the plan or whatnot. We don't have enough details is the thing. So we're just going to have to wait and see because clearly this isn't something that's going to go away. That's players' money that we're talking about. Again, CBA deals should be discussed. So stay tuned.
I do think this is one of the examples though of why I do think it's good that there is a union that's advocating for these players because
Agreed.
If the union wasn't in place, I mean, who's going to bring attention to this? Like a handful of players could kind of say, hey, who was player of the week? Nobody got paid a bonus, but like it's going to get probably swept. It's going to be easier to sweep that under the rug. Mm-hmm. Whereas when you have the union and sort of that solidarity, that collective voice of all of the players, it's harder to ignore that, right? And it sort of brings more attention to it. And actually, I think has a better likelihood of actually being addressed and hopefully resolved than if there wasn't a union. So I do think it's going to show you, we've come a long way from, in referencing the AAF days where it was just when that league folded up shop and, everything hit the fan, players didn't have anybody to sort of catch them or advocate for them or help them. And so at least having this union in place, this is showing that it's doing what it's supposed to be doing.
And let's not forget every professional sports league, the big four in the US, especially, and even in football, the main football leagues, all of them have unionization involved. So you can have the best intentions as a business. Doesn't mean you shouldn't consider at a sports level with how high risk your job is to have someone in your corner in case it's I don't know, this is a gray area type of thing. No. The PA is there to establish that there's a fine line that they're supposed to be following on issues that can be very crucial to a player's health and also their financial well-being at the same point. So it's a good measure. This is an example of the PA doing its work. We'll see if they get that work done. They have to advocate and push the office to do their job, the UFL office, that is. We will find out soon enough about that. One thing they cannot be disappointed at, to me, I'm happy to see this return too. The Sportsman of the Year award does return. So that is a good sign there. It's another accolades bonus piece. So that's something I guess we'll keep an eye on because this is part of what the PA is talking about with the Player of the Week. But Sportsman of the Year is a great feel-good award. Basically, honestly, the NFL's UFL's Walter Payton the Man of the Year award. It's a man that exemplifies the UFL's best off-the-field efforts and efforts of a player that is pushing to help grow communities and help with creating change in the world, is how it's put. And was brought over from the USFL the last 2 seasons. It's great to see it return. That's all I can tell you.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I thought in year one when they announced that for the USFL at the end of the season and Matt Colburn won the award, it was great for him. I thought they did an even better job with it in year two, though, in the USFL, where they had one player nominated from each team, kind of like they
Yes.
do in the NFL. And then they were able to sort of drum up, interest or promote those guys and say, in kind of the leading up to the championship, here's eight guys, a guy from each team, what they're doing, what they've done, why they were nominated for this award, and sort of promote things across the league that were happening. And then obviously they got to highlight, the one winner, and last year was Ethan Westbrooks. And so, I think I thought it was a neat thing that they were doing. Obviously, very similar to what the NFL does, like you said, with the Walter Payton Award. But that's a very prestigious award in the NFL. It carries a lot of weight to win that. And I think the USFL and now UFL are really trying to sort of lean into that too and say, yes, we want to highlight our players' successes on the field, but we also want to be a league that gives back to the community, that is sort of a force for positive change in the markets that we're in and really, across the country. And this is a great way to sort of do that.
Yeah, last year's winner, Ethan Westbrooks, again, super thankful we got to see and talk to him at Summer Stock last year. But both of those gentlemen, put in the work. Westbrooks was so active in the Detroit metro area, in the community, doing visits at schools, doing, and helping with youth programs, was impressive work. And I think with the UFL, a lot of, and this was kind of, some people felt differently about this, I will say, but a lot of us, when we talked about the hub in Arlington, we were wondering, hey, does that remove any of those community efforts or maybe limit the said community efforts? Because again, these guys got to fly out even for home games on a regular basis. Now they've done, I will say, compared to what the XFL I thought did with this last year, I think this has been a way better effort to get into communities with having events and players in said communities this year. And going and doing things to help with community efforts is a lot better. So, that is a good positive to see. And I think we will see not saying there won't be, but it will feel a lot more like this award has definitely had an impact somewhere, and that the UFL is trying to be active and having people give opportunities to help give back. So I love seeing this. Look, it's just good for sports to give to communities and have that relationship anyway. You want to be part of where you're playing at. It's a good way to connect with the people that do get to see you every day, or at least associate with the brand every day, is knowing that you're doing a good part to help out and not just be in a community, but you're also helping to improve the said community that you are supposed to be representing too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you mentioned this. I mean, with the hub situation, I know some people were kind of like, "Oh, this is kind of weird. Like, these people aren't living in each of these 8 markets. So how much can they really give back?" But like you said, I think, to kind of maybe put the opposite spin on it, you could say, well, it would be really easy for these guys not to care about the markets, not to do anything in the markets. And so it's
True.
actually sort of, there's extra reason to highlight and to praise the guys that are going out of their way when they really don't have to do this, to try to connect in those local markets and give back in those local markets. And I think it's a good way to let people know, as you kind of alluded to, in those markets, that, hey, yes, some of our players or all of our players might not live in X city, but we still are doing things. We still are on the ground. We still are finding ways to give back. And this gives you a really good way to sort of highlight that and try to, again, build more of a connection or relationship between the league and individual players, as well as, again, the cities and markets that these teams are in.
Yeah, absolutely. The Sportsman of the Year will be announced, by the way, in St. Louis for at the UFL Championship game. So stay tuned to that. That will probably be announced later. No specifics on the selection process, but wouldn't be too far of a stretch to say that a similar per team, per player setup again might not be out of the question. Because I'm with you, it wasn't a bad idea to, open it up and kind of highlight, even if it's not an award winner, much like the NFL, these are people that are trying to use their platform and their status as an athlete and someone that gets looked up to help expand upon and help grow communities that they are part of. So I would say, and I would expect that is what they're going to try and do again. I imagine the PA would also like that because it highlights their players as well. So stay tuned to that is all I can tell you. Any final thoughts on this, Luke?
No, I like I said, I think it's great. I mean, I remember last year, like, For example, Boogie Roberts was another guy who was nominated from the Maulers, didn't end up winning the award, but like definitely a guy who deserved to be highlighted for what he did off the field for the league, for Canton and sort of the Northern Ohio area where they were, also for Pittsburgh where his team was sort of, so I think when you take all those factors into consideration, I think it's a great thing that they're carrying it over. And especially over time, assuming this league, continues to grow and get more and more in markets, it'll just be, make even more of a connection. It'll be even, I think, a better thing in the years to come too.
Right. Future. It's a future thing as well. So I'm absolutely with you. Good move. Like I said, this is a good addition back from the merger days here, and going to be good to see it. It's good to, like I said, it's good to celebrate good efforts and people that are giving back in this world and to the communities that they're in. So love it. And we'll be watching out for those people that are doing their best to help grow everything else. All right. Notable roster moves, Luke. And a lot of these come from the last day or so. San Antonio fans especially have been kind of having some moves to watch out for, mainly because, they had some key injuries. Destroying's not there anymore. So who's kicking for these Brahmas right now? He's not going to be back. Fractured neck. So keep that in mind. Alex Millette is on IR as well. So they need to get some reserve for center. And also they released TJ Vasher. So who did they all add? And they actually added a fourth person to add on to the roster that I think popped out a lot more. And I actually want to lead off with this person because, I understand you're a Vikings fan outside of the UFL, and between you and James, this name was easily popping out on the screen. Cameron Dantzler, former third-round pick for the Vikings, played for the team, from what I understand, for 3 years between 2020 and 2022, 35 NFL game appearances. Big name for just the fact that a lot of NFL experience and a guy that kind of fizzled out really quick from everything that I've researched.
Yeah, definitely. When I saw the PR release and saw his name, I had to sort of do a double take because I was like, wait, Cam Dantzler that played for the Vikings? And then I was like, oh yeah, that's him. And, I think he's like a lot of, I'm going to give some Stallions references because that's the team I know the best, obviously, but he reminds me of a guy like Matt Corral, Jay Sternberger, Taco Charlton, some of those guys that, were highly touted coming out of college. Dantzler played at Mississippi State, had a really good college career there, was considered, one of the top defensive backs coming out of that draft class, and went in the third round, as you mentioned, to the Vikings. People really hoped that he would kind of be, there was some turnover in the Viking secondary, kind of hoped that he would be, one of the guys for them. And unfortunately, for various reasons, it just didn't quite pan out as hoped. And like you said, he did still get a decent bit of NFL playing time and NFL action. But again, kind of like some of these other guys on other teams that we know are in this league now, for just various reasons, his NFL journey didn't sort of go according to plan. And this gives him a second chance to sort of prove that he can be a dominant lockdown corner amongst really great competition and potentially propel himself back into the league like we've seen happen with lots of other guys. So I think he has the potential to be a massive signing for the Brahmas. I think, again, the talent is there. It's I mentioned Jay Sternberger, right? He was also a third-round draft pick. And, he was with Green Bay for a few years. Again, for different reasons, things just didn't quite pan out. But you saw what he was able to do in the USFL last year in his first year in spring football. And I think Dantzler could have a very similar sort of story. Unfortunately, he's coming in, a couple weeks into the season. I would have loved for it to seen him, get signed at the beginning of the year and have a full kind of body of work. But there's still enough time for him to make a difference. And so, I mean, I think a good Brahmas team just got better adding a guy like that.
Yeah, he'll have to get up to speed, but I think much like yourself, me, and I think plenty of others that do cover this league, he seems like someone that is a candidate that could rocket back up to a starting spot really quick. No offense, watching Brahmas games, this is something that's worried me, is that a better passing attack with a little bit more crispness over the last 2 weeks. The secondary to me is one of the weaker parts of the Brahmas overall roster, and that's a move that I'm not surprised they made. It's a good move. Based on the experience. 35 games playing in the NFL is nothing to slouch at. Clearly he did have the talent. I think, honestly, looking at his history and think about the Vikings as well, Mike Zimmer was the head coach when he got picked up, and he was cut during the first year of Kevin O'Connell's era. Not to mention he was kind of on the inactives on 2021. Just kind of seemed like he fizzled out of favor and then just couldn't stick because here's the deal. Cornerbacks are a super competitive piece on any roster for any spot to be claimed. It's very cutthroat. And clearly that is kind of the flux he was in the last 2 years. Those are the type of players, you and me really want to see more in this league, is guys that go, okay, look, I've been trying to play this practice squad, get a roster type of game. Let me go take a jump and start getting actual tape again. And this is someone that I think is perfect fit. Dude is only 25 years old, has plenty of youth left in the tank, just needs to get out somewhere and start making some reps and showing off some tape again. Perfect guy to do that. And like I said, big deal for the league because it's a guy who's played multiple seasons on rosters and just had a tough break.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's a huge signing. It's, I would love to hear, maybe eventually this will come out, but I would love to hear kind of what his story has been in terms of deciding to come to the UFL. It's like you kind of wonder, was this a guy who maybe was pursued by the league or some teams in the league, but was kind of on the fence about it, was maybe on the fence about spring football, and then he saw kind of the first couple of weeks of gameplay, saw what guys were doing, saw specifically what the Brahmas were doing, and said, you know what, I actually think this is something that could really help my career. Or maybe that's what happened. Maybe there was other factors that, it's just interesting that it happened in sort of week 2, week 3 of the season as opposed to in the off season. And I would love to, eventually, hopefully it'll come out. We'll get the chance maybe to hear from him sort of what kind of sealed the deal for him and him deciding that this would be the best thing for his career. But I think it definitely has the potential to really propel him back into the NFL if he's able to do what I know he's capable of in this league. And again, playing on a great team that's going to get a lot of exposure is definitely going to help him too.
Oh, without a doubt. I think also Mark Lillibridge is also being aggressive here. They're a 2-0 team, gotten off to a hot start. Competition's going to get tougher as the year goes on. We've seen with spring leagues, these teams get better, get more under their feet. And the in-division matchups are going to be tougher, with DC probably getting a second crack later. St. Louis already appears to be at least minimum the number 2 team in that conference, if not in our upper 4, as we've been doing week by week. So, I think that they're just addressing a problem as well. Like you were saying right out of the gate, hey, we're 2-0. Let's just start making some fixes and making some changes as we go. And this is a way to get a guy in that, it's not too late in the year as well. Wish he could be in the training camp, but I think this is the time to say, hey, come to a good team. Wade Phillips is there as well. You can kind of peck some knowledge if you want defensively off of him. We have a pretty damn good staff ourselves as well, and Will Reed as a defensive coordinator and company. So why not take the chance? And I think that's what it is. More players you want to see do this to take the chance is how I think this will get built. The more seasons come by, the more good word of mouth goes for agents and players, which we can hopefully see more jumps just like this. Very happy to see it for the league here. For the Brahmas, the rest of these roster moves really are just to fill other acquainted moves. So first off, Alex Filstrom from Illinois. He's actually being brought in as depth to replace Alex Millette, placed on IR. For those that aren't remembering or are still remembering, Millette was the one who caught that famous fake punt touchdown in week 1. Unfortunately, week 2, he did not have a great time on the field, was knocked out pretty quickly, did try to come back for a few drives, but now is on IR. We'll see if he is able to return later this season. Also, the bigger one, though, because everyone's asking, who's replacing Destroying? And Luke, we finally got our answer. Ryan Santoso will be stepping in for this. Now, interesting enough, I think a lot of us thought Matt Amendola was going to be a front runner to do this, but speculation's only a bit here, Luke. I'm wondering if Matt is a little burned by not being the guy to start, as we've seen some drama that supposedly some accounts have claimed that this competition was either really cutthroat or at times, depending on the stats, it was pretty even, kind of makes you think. But that being said, let's talk about that. And then the Santoso pickup, your thoughts.
Yeah, no, I had the same sort of speculations that you did. I assumed whenever Destroying, when it came out that he was going to be placed on IR and miss the rest of the season, I assumed that Amendola would be the guy they would call, right? I mean, it makes sense. He was in camp with them. Supposedly he did well in camp. He's a very experienced veteran NFL kicker. Like, just makes sense, right? Just bring him back. And then when they didn't, I was kind of like, oh, well, did Amendola want to come back, after they sort of decided to go with Destroying over him? Did he maybe feel a little slighted by that? I mean, I don't want to sort of project onto him, but I know if I was in his shoes and I was an experienced NFL veteran kicker and kind of the team ended up going with Destroying, who doesn't have that same experience instead of me, and I felt like I had a good camp, which it sounds like he did, I would maybe feel a little burned by the team and maybe want to look elsewhere to kind of continue my journey. So who knows? I mean, certainly we haven't gotten a statement from Amendola along those lines, and we probably won't. But I was very surprised that he didn't come back. I think Ryan Santoso. I mean, I think is obviously a great option. Very similar guy to Amendola in the sense that he's been around for a while, very veteran, very experienced, has been different NFL teams, and so not a bad move by any stretch of the imagination, and definitely a great player to come in and try and fill Destroying shoes. But yeah, definitely surprised that it wasn't Amendola. And again, we can only speculate as to why that is, but not sure he left with the best taste in his mouth after how sort of things transpired in camp.
Yeah, it's been kind of an interesting week besides Destroying announcing the injuries, because we've had like Isaac Punts, who's announcing conspiracy theory in his end, or like, and that whole beef is fascinating between him and Destroying's accounts. The whole thing for like ever since camp has been just like these little back and forth pecks at each other, even with him winning the job, midway through camp, still the same thing. But, I look, Amendola's not back. Clearly he can go and play in these leagues, and he's proven it. But as we saw, and we've discussed on ATU, Destroying has a hell of a leg for kickoffs. And if you get it close enough in the numbers for the field goals, and the kickoff numbers are better in a league that incentivizes that you need to get buried back in opposing territory to help with scores and help with field position, yeah, I think that's fair. And at this point, you just needed someone that's a veteran and who has a veteran leg. Santoso's been around the block. We're talking Tennessee Titans, Detroit Lions, Los Angeles Rams at the time, Jacksonville Jaguars. He's made stops at some practice squads, some starts, but he's been in the league and been a veteran presence throughout with other places to go. So it's a need that's filled up. I will say for the PR sense, because yes, I've said on record, Destroying, I more look as like, hey, I'm glad you're in the league as a kicker. But for the PR sense, for people that cover it, clearly it sucks because he has been giving them good PR for the league, because he's been a good presence for getting people to check out the league. So that's a shame. I hope that he makes his return. Maybe if he can come back next year, that'd be great, because pretty much he's out for the year. He ain't coming back. I hope he's back next year. That's all I can say.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate. I mean, I was a little skeptical about him, kind of from the jump, but to his credit, I mean, he has a huge leg, and I think week 1, he had like the longest kick average as far as kickoffs.
Yeah.
And we never got to see him really kick field goals. So, I think they obviously decided to go with him over Amendola, and I feel it's a kind of a bummer, because we all thought we were going to get to see sort of a whole full season of work from him and see what he was really capable of, and we really didn't get that opportunity. And then, obviously the fact that we're not getting that opportunity because he fractured his neck, which is a horrible injury to suffer and to now have to recover from. So, I mean, yeah, it's a terrible situation. I hate it for him, and it's a bummer for the league to not have that storyline for people to be able to continue to follow, because a lot of people were really interested in it. And it's football, injuries happen. It's just, you hate it when it does.
Something I got to bring up before we leave this conversation on Destroying and also this move. Been seeing the angle of this injury as well. If this was the XFL kickoff, this wouldn't happen. And let's pause here. Remember, first off, no matter what kickoff it is, the kicker's always farthest back. So the high impact, the only player getting high impact in all these scenarios is the kicker. Second off, and Destroying even said this as well to those that apparently didn't pay attention. You know who you are. I'm just going to lay it out there. Terrible tackling. It's straight up. Basically, he went in and speared the ball carrier. That is instantly high risk for neck injury. So doesn't matter what kickoff it is. You have to tackle better. Credit, he even admitted he had not practiced much with the tackle form, and that's what resulted in it. I just want to put it out there that for those that are claiming this is a kickoff formation issue, it's not. Don't try and push something like that. That's very disingenuous. dude had a terrible injury, and even himself admitting it was because he didn't know how to properly tackle. Just want to lay it out there because I thought that was kind of ridiculous this week that was tried to be thrown out there as some, like, I get it. The NFL's going the XFL kickoff, but don't make it like beyond ridiculous measures. Well, if this was no. The kicker is running up to the line like any other scenario. Please know what you're talking about. That's all I got to say to that. You know who you are. That's all I got to say.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, it was a bad tackle, and it could have happened on any type of kickoff. I don't really know how this could have been avoided other than him using proper tackling form. Moving a couple players around on the field doesn't change the fact that, like you said, he sort of did textbook 101. This is how you don't tackle, because this is what can happen if you do. So, the formation of the kickoff is sort of irrelevant at that point. It was a good return. Because it was a good return, the kicker was forced into making a tackle. And unfortunately, as you said, as Destroying admitted, he didn't use proper form, and unfortunately had to sort of suffer the consequences of that in any sort of type of kickoff. If it was a decent return and the kicker was forced into that situation, this could easily have happened as well. So, I think the type of kickoff is irrelevant in this sort of instance.
Yeah. Well, closes the book on that. I'm just, guys, just stop for a second. All I'm saying, just think about it a little extra when you're thinking about these takes like this, because I don't know, just seems like there was a little too much talk around that portion this week. I don't know if I'm crazy. I just want to end it with that is all. We got a few more pieces to bring up. There were some bigger names. Calvin Turner, by the way, Brahmas had one other addition that made some people raise some eyebrows. Receiver coming back. He was in camp with the Brahmas and was let go. And to many, even our own James Larson, a surprise cut. But he's being brought in with TJ Vasher, veteran of the Brahmas last year, being replaced. I see this, and I don't know if you see this another way, Luke. I just see this similar to how we're talking with Dantzler. Look, they're 2-0. They're trying to get guys that are going to perform and continue to keep themselves ahead of the curb. And I think this is just someone, seeing if they can get better depth. Maybe I haven't seen much from Vasher that I would say is noteworthy, but Turner was highly touted coming out into camp, and maybe they're just trying to see if they can get a different spark from somebody else that's in a more larger personnels for receiving groups.
Yeah, I think everybody was a little surprised that Turner was let go. He was a great player in college at Hawaii, supposedly had a good camp. He's a very sort of electric guy. And so I think a lot of people were scratching their head a little bit whenever he got let go. And the Brahmas offense has definitely looked very potent at points this season. But in terms of the receiving core, it feels like, guys like John Trey Kirkland and one or two others are really kind of getting the lion's share of work. And so, I think, as you mentioned, Vasher, obviously been with the Brahmas, good player. Don't, not a knock at him at all, but he hasn't been one of those guys that's really been a difference maker for them yet through the first couple of weeks here. And, I think Turner was probably one of those guys that it was like, it really probably hurt them to let him go. Like, it's probably not a guy they wanted to, but, with all of these teams, they came to camp with a lot of guys and had to make some difficult decisions. And, a couple of weeks into the season, that might've been sort of, well, hindsight's 2020. Like, did we really maybe make the best choice in letting this guy walk? Maybe not. And maybe we need to bring him back in and give him another shot and see if he can add another spark to the offense. So it'll be interesting to see what he can do with AJ Smith and company there in San Antonio.
That's why you always keep your phone line open and available, because you never know. Absolutely a reason why. And I'll tell you, you bring up a perfect point. The Brahmas, they use Kirkland, Cody Latimer. Those are the main two bread and butter guys right now. Doesn't hurt to have other reliable pieces to go to. Kirkland can definitely carry the load. Latimer has shown he can, of course, last year with the Guardians, and now he's shown it at times through 2 weeks for the Brahmas, but doesn't hurt to have a versatile receiving core and kind of experiment a little bit. Vasher, hoping the best for him moving forward. Turner, we'll see if he gets some reps. Otherwise, he's kicking things off kind of like everybody else, and most of them staying in the inactive, at least till they can work back up and maybe get on an active roster spot later on once they get more adjusted to their systems, is all I can say. Someone that will not need much time, by the way, as we are off San Antonio roster moves. The Roughnecks did need another quarterback. Jared Guarantano going to be out for several weeks with, it appears to be a rib injury. So you got to bring QB in. And, we were wondering, hey, does Kenji Superstar Bahar, because my co-host isn't on here, so I have to meet the quota, is the superstar going to return? The answer is, oh, you're damn right he was going to be coming back. Kenji's back. He is now going to be the QB3 for the Roughnecks. Reed Sinnett going to be starting this week. More on that later when we discuss the game. And then Noah Henderson, it sounds like it moves up more to the number 2. Luke, I'll tell you, I think this was kind of a no-brainer. Curtis Johnson needed a quarterback. He was a surprise cut to many going out of camp. It was a competitive QB battle for Houston. He just knows the system right away. Just bring him back in. I mean, it's a very easy plug and play to have someone, at least for depth. And even if, say, the Roughnecks season goes rougher, you have someone that can step in and should pretty well be accustomed to the offensive playbook by now, with little recoup time to start up as he comes in to start in week, or at least be available in week 3.
Yeah, no, I thought this was a no-brainer. I mean, again, you're a couple weeks into the season. Is Kenji the most talented quarterback out there on the market? Maybe not. I mean, there might be other guys that they could have gone after, but at this point, you're a couple weeks into the season, bringing somebody brand new in off the street who doesn't know the offense, who hasn't sort of built any chemistry with the team. It's just probably not worth it. You've got, Reed Sinnett, who looked pretty good in the time that he played last week. We haven't got to see Nolan Henderson yet, but you've got to think that those are the guys that are going to get an opportunity to sort of take over for Garantano. So I think bringing Kenji in, as kind of that QB3, he knows this team, he knows the system, he knows the coaches, he knows a lot of the players, makes a ton of sense. And, maybe I'll channel my inner ref here. Maybe this is what they've been missing. Maybe the fact that they didn't have Kenji Bahar Superstar is why they got off to a rough start. And now maybe, it's from here on out, it's 10-0. I'm gonna go ahead and qualify that by saying I'm pretty skeptical that that's the case. However, I got to put my ref plug in, and I personally have never been. I think Kenji's a great player. I'm not knocking him, but I've never been super high on him. I've never thought that he was maybe the answer for the Roughnecks, or formerly the Gamblers, in terms of their offense. But some people I know are really high on him and really think that he's a really solid quarterback and didn't maybe get a fair shake. And so, we'll see. Maybe this is the missing piece. It's like the final Infinity Stone, bringing Bahar back, and now the strength of the Roughnecks is going to be released. I have my my doubts about that, but we'll see.
Well, yeah, I'm also on the pump the brakes train, but I'm glad. Look, somebody had to do it. I'll admit it was going to come up. Roughnecks get talked on this show like it's like we breathe air. So no surprise. If anything, look, I think if Reed Sinnett to me showed last week, and credit, backup role, so you don't prepare for him as much, but to me shows that he can't operate this offense. Kenji, to me, if you are really not satisfied, I wouldn't hesitate in saying he could potentially be the number 2 option very soon, because again, Curtis has worked with him in the past. This is a very familiar guy with Curtis Johnson. I think that helps a ton, and if the season needs a spark, I don't think he's a guy that you should put to the side and say it's impossible to see him back on the field. If he's back on the roster, to me, I think Curtis looks at this and goes, hey, if Reed doesn't work out, if he gets injured, I might want to go with the guy who's a veteran in my system and has been through this already for 3 seasons. And I've liked flashes of Kenji. That's the thing. It's crazy. I've seen some of the arm talent. I know that he's mobile. He's not mobile enough. Honestly, he's a guy I think usually could run more, if I am being honest, say an Adrian Martinez. Not as much as Adrian Martinez, but he doesn't run enough to me for a guy that's so speedy and swift the way he is. And who knows? He could be in. Right now it's Reed Sinnett's season, but for the depth pickup, they needed a guy like this. So, and hey, who knows what'll happen later in the year. If Garantano does come back, well, those chances of him stepping in might be, of course, limited. But for now, best chance you might see of him returning in that Roughnecks offense, at least Roughnecks with a Gamblers sticker underneath the helmet decal, is all I could tell you. Final pickup for me, I wanted to bring up just because much like Calvin Turner, Luke, Samson Nakua impressed a lot in camp, it seemed like, too, and he was like a surprise cut as well. He's replacing Devin Ross, who's going on IR. Ross has been through some injury issues last few years, and that sucks for a guy like that. I want to see him get more reps. But, Nakua, much like I've seen in camp, and much like his own brother who's playing in the league too, the Nakuas are a bit scrappy players, man. I'm hoping to see him get some reps here, whoever's behind center for the Panthers. But, another just final thought, quick guy coming in, fills in for Devin Ross. I hope he gets some chances. There's some good highlights of Samson in the offseason. So,
yeah. No, I think he was a guy, obviously given, his brother and that sort of thing. I think he was a guy a lot of people were excited to see. And unfortunately, we didn't get that opportunity. So I'm excited for him that he's worked his way back into the league. And again, unfortunately, due to an injury to Ross, hate that, for him. But it'll be interesting to see if he can get some playing time and if he can maybe add a little extra spark to the Panthers offense. And one other one I was going to mention too, that I think I want to say James broke this just yesterday. But Henri St. Amour was picked up by the Arlington Renegades.
I would have been so upset if I passed by that because that's a great Renegades pickup. Yes. And someone that's another guy. I'm shocked he didn't have a spot this year. Please go on because excellent D end for the Breakers.
He was fantastic with the Breakers last season. I was really excited when the Stallions picked him up through the dispersal draft process and with the merger and everything that happened. Unfortunately, the Stallions ended up letting him go, which, the Stallions D-line room was just so loaded. And we saw last week when they played Michigan what the D-line that they have are capable of. So you see why they kept the guys that they did. But unfortunately, that meant like some of the really, really good players they had, like Hercules Mataafa, Henri St. Amour, like those were guys that unfortunately ended up getting let go. But they're very talented and deserve to be in this league. And so I hated it for them. But I'm really excited to see Henri land with a team. And I think Arlington, they're looking for – they've been sort of right there on the cusp. I mean, they played close with Birmingham for the first half, kind of, let Birmingham run away with it more in the second half. And then this past week, they were right there in that game with St. Louis. And so I think just another little spark on that defensive line. I've seen what Henri can do, and I think he's a great addition for them and glad to see him back in the league.
He definitely is going to be a great fill for them. They have been needing it the first 2 weeks. They've kind of been bullied up front at times. Credit, he's going to be more going off the edge, but look, they need anything and anyone they can get to try and up, especially their run defense. It's been atrocious for 2 weeks in a row. They need to get some more personnel and start mixing and matching who's going to be able to best fill those gaps. And that is somebody that is absolutely going to be able to do that. If anything, off the edge with Vic Beasley on the other side should help with at least applying better pressure. Because that's something else, I've noticed with the Renegades, and you may have noticed as well, at least through 2 weeks, limited on the pressure front, or at least it comes in spurts. It's not very consistent. So it doesn't hurt to have a guy who's a six sack guy, multiple tackles for loss, 30 tackles last year, someone who can do it all. It's good to have a guy like that on your roster. And I think he'll get elevated very quickly, if anything, minimum rotational role until I think he might supersede someone on that line.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely could see that. I was honestly surprised. I thought maybe Memphis might pick him up once the Stallions let him go because of the connection he had with Coach DiFilippo and playing in New Orleans last year and things. But obviously that hadn't happened. So I think just glad to see him get a chance to get back into the league. And like you said, I expect good things from him in Arlington.
Yeah, definitely will. Right now he is, again, it's just because of the pickup, inactive right now. I wouldn't suspect to see him more involved until week 4, but right now it's building. They especially need to start getting into gear. 0-2, credit, tough competition, but a big week ahead now when you have to play DC. We'll discuss that momentarily, actually, as they have to get some sort of energy going. 0-3, it's a bit of a burial right there once you get into that point into the year, and that conference is extremely tough, to say the least. They have to start getting some ground and get some wins under their belt. And speaking of which, let's just dive straight into this matchup. It is time to give you your week 3 analysis and games picks that we're going to have for this week. We did it last week. We're going to do it again. It's going to happen. And Luke's going to give his best picks that maybe he's biased with the Stallions, but that's okay. I'm accepting that. I'm going to be maybe biased with my Panthers this week, but we'll hold off on that. We got the DC Defenders and the Arlington Renegades. I did just highlight the defensive woes the Renegades are facing, but Luke, let's be clear. DC was a bit better second half on finding identity. identity offensively still is a struggle. And look, Greg Williams almost just gave away a free win. That is going to be a inside joke forever for the rest of the season on the Cover Zero hot mic being out there, because there's no reason that should have been called again. It's like he learned nothing from his past. Who has more to prove this week, Luke, DC or Arlington?
I think they both have a lot to prove. I think Arlington's back is a little bit more against the wall just because they started off 0-2. And so, like you just mentioned, you don't want to go down 0-3 in a 10-week season. That's a tough place to be. It's not an impossible hole to climb out of, but with the competition you've got to go up against in this league and the parity, 0-3 is a rough start. So I think Arlington probably does have a little bit more to prove just because of their record. But DC, there's a ton of question marks. I mean, you see moments and flashes where it's like, oh, this does kind of remind you of the DC team of 2023 that looked almost unstoppable for a lot of the XFL season. But then you also have moments where it's like, this team doesn't really look like they know exactly what they're doing out there. Like they don't look like the dominant force they were last year. So they've got a lot to prove as well. And Arlington's not a bad team. I mean, they've lost 2 relatively close games to 2 really good teams. They've got an incredible quarterback that, we all love in Luis Perez. They've got a great coach. They got off to a slow start last year and they were able to turn it around. So you can't sleep on them. But yeah, this is 2 teams that I think are sort of on the cusp of digging themselves a hole if they don't get things figured out quickly. So it's a lot at stake for both of these teams in this game.
Absolutely. And I think, look, Arlington, again, tough draw, but when you have in your grasp a potential win, execution came down to it at the end of that competition against St. Louis. Of course, credit, massive crowd, but look, 3-point contest, you miss a field goal to go up, and then you let the Battlehawks drive down your throat and take the game winner themselves. It's a hard pill to swallow right there. So, I mean, clearly progress was made week over week. Cause remember week 1, second half, they disappeared against your Stallions and had no answer whatsoever. At least in week 2, consistently a dogfight, consistently in the trenches. But still some issues. Again, we talk about the run defense being atrocious. And I mean, it clearly is. It's dead last in the league right now in run defense alone. Not pretty at this time. Now, DC, if this was with Abram Smith, I wouldn't even be debating this game, but that's the thing. The defenders still are finding identity in the run game and are still kind of experimenting. Fred Keiss, I wish him luck with that, because last year, at least, they knew the formula was leaning on Abram Smith, and then Jordan Ta'amu could open up the pass attack thanks to Chris Blair and Lucky Jackson being available and just being deep targets that you could throw to at any given time, because the defenses would have to be focused so much on giving energy to Abram. Now, they're 6th best in the league, and that's for good reason, because teams are going, okay, well, if Abram's not here and their line is not able to bully us as much and get those open lanes, well, okay, we'll just make Jordan throw. And as you and I have seen, and I think I know at least I have equated to this. I don't know if you equated this. DC looks like the Tampa Bay Bandits from 2022 with Jordan Ta'amu sitting there, because of the fact the run game, similar with Todd Haley, didn't help him out. And he was left to his own devices to hope that his personnel in the pass game would help him. It's been getting a bit better, but let's be honest, there's been some letdowns and drops that I'm like, this looks way too eerily close to what I remember from 2 years ago. But hey, nonetheless, they're 1-1, and they did seem to catch some stuff second half. Look pretty good, Luke. I'm getting good vibes out of them, at least ending out into week 3.
Yeah, I mean, I think Ta'amu was in sort of the perfect spot last year in the XFL, like you mentioned, with that run game, and also with De'Aaron King coming in on sort of special packages and special plays to kind of mix things up. You take both those out of the equation, and it's sort of all now falling on Ta'amu's shoulders. And people that didn't follow the USFL in 2022 might be a little bit surprised, but I think those of us who did follow that league are maybe not so surprised, because yes, Ta'amu, while he was a one of probably the better quarterbacks in the USFL in 2022, and he did have some good plays, he also really struggled at times. And so I just don't know that. I mean, he's a good quarterback. Again, I don't want to discredit what he's been able to accomplish in his career, but I don't know that he's the kind of guy that if the entire offense basically just falls on his shoulders, he's going to be able to get it done. And so I think they've got to figure out quickly, some other things to kind of help him so he can play to his full potential. But right now, I don't feel like he's able to do that because he just doesn't have the help like he did last year.
Without a doubt. I do think one thing that helps him, and we talked about this on ATU a little bit with the recaps from week 2, is that they need to get guys he has good repertoire with. And Ty Scott is starting to become that main person. It's weird because everyone, this is spring football though, Luke. So, I'm going to bear in mind with me saying this. It is weird that, Kiki Cootie, who is the more veteran player here, credit, terrible drop last week that could have gone for a touchdown. He's not been the main receiver here. It is definitely Ty Scott. Scott is the leading receiver on the Defenders and has been the biggest big play man on that team. And I think they're finally figuring that out. So definitely want to watch for that. See if Arlington can challenge in the secondary, at least. They couldn't last week. Aitman, and credit, Aitman's a special talent himself, big, lengthy guy, but Aitman was able to go up and get it. Ty Scott, similar explosiveness on plays. I'm going to watch out for that. If they can't get the run game going with Cameron Harris, he's going to be someone they're going to be leaning into, that at least they can try and see if they can poke some holes in the second or third levels.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those games that I think it's hard to know or hard to predict exactly what's going to happen because I think, again, there's so many question marks on both of these teams, despite the fact that, they played each other last year in the championship. And especially down the stretch, they both were really solid teams at the end of the last XFL season.
Oh, yeah.
There's been a lot of turnover, and despite they have the same coaching staffs and things like that on the player side, with all the changes that have happened and things, they just don't look like the same teams that they were at the end of the XFL season. And but on the other hand, they both have shown flashes of what they're capable of. It's just neither one has really put together a solid 4 quarters yet. And there's I think DC comes in this game with that, like I mentioned, the XFL championship, a little extra motivation. I think they felt like they have unfinished business from losing to the Renegades last year. And of course the Renegades, obviously want to prove that they were the best team in the XFL last year and that they deserve to be in the conversation for the best team in the XFL conference this year, despite the fact that they haven't gotten off to that good start. So definitely an intriguing matchup.
I actually think it's going to be kind of a shootout, and here's why, Luke. Look, I try and keep my best up with stats. I knew about the Arlington Renegades defense rushing-wise being the worst in the league. But did you know they're also the worst passing defense in the league, Luke? They are overall the worst. This is Bob Stoops, by the way. Just keep that in mind. This is going to be a shootout, I think, because DC ain't much better. They're right above them, and they have also been showing they can get leaky in the secondary. I think this will be a high scoring game, a little more than maybe even people think right now. And Luis Perez should be able to find some open holes here. He's getting better with saying, hey, I'm just going to go target Sal Canella and the Andre Burnett. I think it's going to be a shootout, man. I think you're going to see some high passing numbers from both these QBs. At least one of them, I'll put my money down now. 300-yard game. I see it with one of them. I don't know if it's Louise. I don't know if it's Jordan, but both these secondaries are weak. Put my money on this game being that game.
I think that would be fun. I think, Arlington was kind of known for their defense last year, but as you pointed out, their defense has not looked very good this year. And, they've got to get that figured out quick. And obviously Stoops is the guy to do that. But going into this week, it's hard to correct all those changes in just 1 week. So there's definitely potential, I think, for you to be right. And I kind of hope that's true. I think the UFL, we've had some really great games, but we haven't really had any super high flying like offensive shootouts yet. I mean, we've had a couple like, the Michigan St. Louis game, it started so slow, it was a defensive battle. And then it became a shootout right there at the end. We've had a couple like halves or quarters that were sort of offensive shootouts, but we haven't maybe gotten that, 40 to 30, something in the 40s to something in the 30s game yet. And maybe this will be the one.
It's like the car catches in and out of gear is how it goes. Yeah. That's also, but yeah, early weeks of spring football, it always seems like that too, until finally some of these teams get it down. Luke, I got to get a score prediction. What you got for me, man?
Man, this one's tough for me. If you go back and watch my episode of State of the Stallions that came out on Thursday morning, I picked DC. I'm kind of second guessing myself a little bit on that, but I won't go back on it. I'll stick with it. So I'm going to go with DC. I probably don't and I'm not as confident that it's going to be as high scoring as maybe as you are. Just because I think these offenses, again, kind of like you just mentioned, sort of have a tendency to sputter, and we might see some turnovers and things in this game, but that kind of inhibit their high flying offensive potential. But I'll go with I think it's going to be close, and I'll go with DC pulls it out. We'll say 24-22.
Okay. Not bad. I'm with DC as well, personally. I just think that a little bit more challenges for Arlington to try and slow down any sort of offensive progress is the thing. Even with DC being kind of start and stop, this is probably their best chance to get under their belt. And again, if it's Fred Keiss from last year, he's shown he's good at adjusting on the fly. So I expect a better performance week over week, much like last week was week over week compared to week one. Give me 28-23, one score game, but I don't think 30. I think it's going to be by UFL standards, a shootout, much like how we saw with St. Louis and Arlington last week. I just don't think Arlington pulls it off. I think too many defensive woes are going to be their downfall. They will find points, but I don't think it's going to be enough to pull out the win is all. Good game, though. That's one you're going to want to tune into. I think that'll be one of the better ones of this week. They've all been great, honestly, for the most part. But I think this is one of the ones you're going to see is like more of the nail biter at the end type of vibe. Speaking of good ones, here's yours that we are going to bring up. Memphis visiting to Birmingham to take on the Stallions. Now, I did say at the beginning of the show, crowds look like they're getting big. They've been opening up some new sections late in the week. So good signs for a team. If you ever see new sections, generally that's a good thing. You want to see those getting sold. So good crowd, even for 8A, it's looking. I'm hoping that's the case and that it's not a Tickmaster fluke or something. But otherwise, look, there's no sugarcoating this. Memphis and or Tampa Bay, as I will make that a continuation of it. Birmingham's had their number forever through 2 years. The thing that Memphis wants to show is can or is there a way and a path you think that the Showboats steal a win in Birmingham and at least reset themselves from last week's complete collapse? Honestly, there's no way to sugarcoat it. It was a complete and utter disaster.
Yeah, I definitely think Memphis is capable of winning this game. I think there's, so far from what I've seen, I think a good level of parity across the league. And so I don't think anybody is, Stallions included, so far out and head and shoulders better than everybody else that it's just kind of like, we know what's going to happen, right? And, Memphis, I was high on them coming into the season, and I feel like I'm still a little higher on them than a lot of people are. I've seen a lot of people like, I think even in our PFN power rankings, they really kind of fell off after that loss. But I mean, overall, they looked really good for most of that game. They totally blew it in the end. There's no way to sugarcoat that. But, their defense specifically looked incredible. Everybody was so high on that San Antonio offense, and for basically 3.5 quarters, San Antonio could barely get a first down. And so, Carnell Lake is a great defensive coordinator. I think he's doing a great job with the Memphis defense there, keeping them in ball games. Again, Case Cookus is one of those guys it's hard to bet against. He's a winner. He's a playmaker. He's really good. And he's kind of like Luis Perez in that way, and they've really struggled to get the run game going. So, I think that is concerning for them. And they're going up against a really, really stout Stallions front seven. And we saw what that front seven did to Michigan's offensive line and EJ Perry. And Michigan has a great rushing attack. And West Hills, after week one, they were the second best rushing attack behind the Stallions, and they couldn't run the ball at all against the Stallions. So I do think Memphis, they gotta figure something out to kind of get into an offensive rhythm and finish drives. I think their defense is good enough to keep them in this game. It's just, I don't know with how good the Stallions defense also has looked so far this year, if their offense is going to be able to put up enough points to pull out the win. But again, when you got a guy like Case Cookus, anything is possible. So I think Memphis, has a shot, but it's really going to come down to Coach DiFilippo coming up with some things offensively, getting creative, and somehow finding ways to get the ball in the end zone, because they had to settle for a lot of field goals last week against a good Brahms team, and you saw what happened, in the end. That wasn't going to cut it, and I think same thing this week. A couple field goals isn't going to cut it against the Stallions in Birmingham.
No, I don't think that should be something. Clearly it's going to get harped on, but you can't. you can't do that against Birmingham. And honestly, I'll even flip this. Birmingham can't do the same, have similar mistakes they had against Michigan. I mean, let's be honest here. I know our Discord, I know I sometimes joke around and maybe I stick with a point to be funny, but like Matt Corral throwing an interception late in the fourth quarter, Birmingham controlled that game. Except that shouldn't feel like it was a one possession at the end. And that's one of the reasons why, you don't want to have those mistakes. Memphis, to me, they let a game slip away against the Brahmas. Really, they should be 2-0 right now. I don't think there's any reason they shouldn't have, except of execution and honestly not being aggressive enough, as I've stated. But now, you have against Birmingham, against Skip Holtz, who, let's be face it, right now the best coach in this entire league in my eyes. You have to be able to, when you take your chances, you aim for the king, you don't miss. If you're within for example, we'll talk about those 3 inside the 10-yard line failed conversions. If you go for a field goal there, that's fine, but you're really being cocky about your results on the other side of the ball. I would not be that conservative again. And I hope that was the lesson that coaching staff took last week is, hey, this league, you can't be that conservative. You have to go for a 4th and goal at some point to push the issue. And it proved it in that loss. 1 touchdown score, and that game is out of the question, even with the onside rules in that case. And I think here at Birmingham, you have to do it the same way. Vegas clearly thinks so too. I just checked the odds on DraftKings. Out of all the matchups this weekend, Memphis is a +7 underdog to Birmingham. No other team is above +2. Clearly, they are considered definitely a heavy underdog by UFL standards. That being said, though, I'm with you. Case Cookus, not too bad of a track record against Skip Holtz coach defenses. It's just, Skip has had the better end of the stick when it comes to finishing the job. As of last year, we saw when he was with the Stars, we thought Philadelphia had won it all and taken away. All of a sudden, Alex Magoo and company charged down the field. Petway catches a touchdown with final seconds on the clock. Rest is history. So not impossible, but certainly it's still a tall task. This is Skip Holtz and company and an offense that, even with it still figuring things out, it's deadly. There's a lot of talents on it, man. You know this very well.
Yeah. And I think the thing about the Stallions is, and again, I don't want to take away from Michigan because I thought Michigan, they hung in there and they deserve credit for that. But as you just alluded to, if the Stallions maybe are a little bit more efficient and maybe a little bit more aggressive, it could have gotten out of hand pretty quickly if they punched some of those scores in the first half. And so I think the scary thing for other teams in the league is that the Stallions clearly have an incredible defense, a much improved defense from last year, a defense that's so good that they don't have to score 25, 30, 40 points a game to win. Offensively, they haven't really been dominant yet, but they've shown signs that they can be. I mean, nobody has more yards than them. They have 300 and I think 32 or something like that rushing yards, and the next closest team in the league has 170 some. If they can just kind of figure out the quarterback situation and get either Corral or Martinez or both of them, whatever it's going to be, sort of more in sync with the receivers, then they might be unstoppable. But right now, they still are vulnerable, and Memphis, kind of fortunate for them, gets them early in the season before they maybe get some of those things worked out, and they've got an opportunity to pull off a big upset. But again, you're going to have to. I think Memphis is going to have to play perfect. They can't go in and shoot themselves in the foot and expect to win this game.
Luke, real talk. What do you make of this QB situation in Birmingham? Obviously, Skip publicly has stated it's a 2 QB system. Hasn't really implied any competition. But look, we've had 2 weeks where I think my honest opinion is that each quarterback's had at least a solidish week for one. Now, credit that first week of Matt Corral, easily the best of the 2 so far through the season. But, last week it felt like a complete flip of the script. And with one drop Marlon Williams touchdown pass, it could have looked even better for the flip of the script for Adrian Martinez. I mean, what do you make of this? Because I see it as Martinez looks to me more like the Alex Magoo archetype. It's just he's more of a raw talent passing wise. Corral is much more, let's just say, passing focused, but he can run if he needs to. It's kind of a hard dynamic. They're both very similar, but it's very small, I would say, just details or little intricacies that make them just enough different to where they're doing this 2 QB system?
Yeah, I mean, I've been on record saying I'm not a huge fan of the 2 QB thing. I never really have been. I feel like
Never
I've
have I
seen
personally. So,
yeah. I
welcome
mean,
to the club.
yeah.
Jared Schuster and I, we started it. You are very welcome to be a third chapter member because we will add on people.
Yeah,
Mike Riley, sorry, buddy. I still am holding that on you.
I know it's kind of a cliche, but like the saying, if you have 2 quarterbacks, you have none. I mean, I kind of think that's true. And I think that the Stallions, again, their defense has been good enough that they haven't needed their offense to really sort of be, play lights out in order to win games. But I think if push comes to shove and they need that, this 2 quarterback thing doesn't look like it's going to get it done. And I think in a spring league where you have limited time, short training camp, a short season, like these guys get limited reps. And I think it's just hard to build a lot of chemistry or rhythm when you're going a series in, 2 series out, 2 series in, a series out. And we've seen that with the Stallions. I mean, I just don't think either of these guys have been able to play to their full potential because they're not in sync with the receivers. And they both kind of have throws that it's just like, well, you thought the receiver was going to break in, but they broke out, and it's just nobody's on the same page. And that's just happening too often. And so I don't know. I'm not crazy about the 2 QB thing. I think both of these guys are fantastic quarterbacks, and I think it's very possible that if they weren't on the same roster, they might both be starting quarterbacks in this league. The Stallions are fortunate that they have them both, but I do think, in my personal opinion, I think they need to pick one and sort of let that guy have the opportunity to develop some continuity, to develop some synergy with the rest of the offense. Again, James Larson was with me on State of the Stallions this week, and we talked about it. And he's a little higher on Martinez. I'm on the record. I'm still a little higher on Corral. I think, what I said on there, and I'll say again here, is that I think in the short term, I do think the offense could be more potent with Martinez because of what he can do with his legs. And if things break down, he can take off and get 30 yards, like nothing. Yeah, I mean,
flies.
it's crazy. But I think in the long term, sort of long run, I think the ceiling is higher with Corral because of his arm talent. I think the ability that he has to command this offense and make plays, both with his legs, but also with his arm. And so I would like to see them let Corral just kind of be the guy for a couple of weeks. And, if it doesn't pan out, you can maybe sort of reassess. And that doesn't mean you can't bring Adrian in sort of for a play or two every now and then, kind of like what the Defenders did with Derek King last year, and what the Renegades are kind of doing with Lindsey Scott right now.
Right.
Doesn't mean you can't never bring him in, but I think the whole sort of like, we're going to give these guys exactly 50% of snaps for one of them and 50% of snaps for the other. I don't know. I'm not crazy about that.
I can't do that. I'm with you. It throws off any chemistry to me. And I know that there have been some players and coaching staffs that have said that's not totally the case. I don't buy that personally. I really don't, because receivers especially, they get in and used to cadences with quarterbacks, especially the better ones in any level of football. So I definitely want one personally to win out and maybe be Gadget. In a realistic world scenario, to me, Martinez is the perfect Gadget quarterback for the fact that he's speedy. He can throw if he needs to. It's like a Derek King, but like on steroids for the speed. So that's how it is. But as we've seen, he's performed enough to where he's getting his nods. And actually, Luke, while we're talking, the depth charts came out, and I don't know, it's not say this is like, set in stone or 10 Commandments tablets thing, but like Martinez is the starter for at least this series first, which Corral has been the guy the first 2 weeks to come out for week 1 and 2 to be starting the first series. So interesting change. I don't know if that's too far to look into. I wouldn't look too far into it, but it is something that, hey, it's a new thing for this week. Both are probably going to get their own snaps either way, but Martinez gets the first crack, which I do find quite intriguing given that both have had their weeks so far. So, something to keep an eye on. And I mean, does that mean anything to you? I guess I actually am curious to you on that.
I think it does mean something because, I mean, I'll put it this way. I don't think it means nothing. I also wouldn't read into it too much. I think Skip seems to still be pretty firmly committed to the sort of 50-50 split. So if we get to the end of the game and Martinez has played, 75% of snaps, I think that would be very notable.
Yeah.
The fact that he's starting, I think it's interesting because up to this point, they seem to make it pretty clear that Corral is kind of like QB1, and he'll always kind of get like the first kind of crack at things, and then Martinez will be brought in. But at the same time, it's hard to say because like this maybe could have been Skip's plan all along. Like Skip might have said, well, I'm going to let Corral start the first game or two, see how it goes. If they're still kind of neck and neck, maybe I'll let Adrian start a game. But it's like, I guarantee you, I mean, I feel very confident in saying that like we'll probably see Corral on the third series of the game, you know? So it's
Sure.
like, is it like, again, so I wouldn't read into it too much, but I don't think it means nothing. I think if Corral had maybe played better last week or in week one and more consistently, then maybe he retains that spot as the starter. And again, Martinez maybe starts to fade a little bit more. But Martinez is sort of nipping at his heels, I think, especially after last week. So
the run game potential too does not help the case for Corral as well. I mean, again, 2 straight weeks in credit. Martinez limited action week 1, and he still got 59 yards just scrambling. You know, your quarterback shouldn't always scramble, but if you can get a 59-yard game and the next one get 65 with a combined 140 yards of total offense yourself and potentially just missed out on 1 touchdown pass. I mean, I don't know. Just it's kind of entertaining thing to think about is all I can tell you because it's not going away. Eventually I think you think the same as this. They're going to bail on the 2 QB system by the end of the year. It has to go away. You know, I just don't see it happening all season. Someone's going to win that job, even though I know the whole point is for reps. I get it. Someone's going to win that job though when the going gets tough and a championship is on the line. It's going to happen.
Yeah. I sure hope so, man. I don't know for my own sake. I don't know if I can take the start and stop in and out of having these 2 guys. But I mean, the way Skip's talked about it, he's made it sort of sound like neither one of these guys have separated themselves from the other yet. And so he feels like he has to sort of play both of them and give them both an opportunity because he feels like they both have sort of earned that. And neither one has necessarily earned the right to get all the snaps. And so I do think maybe hopefully by, in a couple of weeks, maybe at least by the middle of the season, they'll start to get the sense that, hey, given the body of work in practice and in games for the first, 4 or 5 weeks, it seems pretty clear that X quarterback, whichever one it might be, is kind of our guy. And again, maybe that doesn't mean that the other one never comes in, but at least you might start to see it not be such a 50-50 kind of split.
And at least some differentiation is going to happen. That's the only thing. That's the only thing. So we will see that. It's just when is the question. Week 3, we'll find out. And especially if it's a close week 3, or heaven forbid an upset or one completely falls off the rails, that might incentivize some things. Luke, I need a score prediction. I'm getting a vibe that I know who you're picking. I just want to know how close it is if I'm not guessing incorrectly.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to go with the Stallions. I think both teams I think have good defenses, but and both teams have good offenses, but I think the Stallions offense to me has shown more potential and seems more well-rounded than the Showboats offense. I think the Showboats are going to struggle to score touchdowns again, going up against a really good defense in the Stallions defense. And the Stallions might too, but I expect Skip to kind of maybe figure some things out, make some adjustments, be a little bit more aggressive. They're getting to play at home, first home game of the season, looking like it's going to be hopefully a pretty good crowd in the night game. You factor all those things in, and it's just I can't go against the Stallions. So I'm going to go with Stallions win. We'll say 27-16. I think I actually like them against the spread. I think they win by more than a touchdown. Maybe a score kind of similar to that week 1 Arlington game. I don't necessarily think the Stallions will run away with it, but and it might be close for a while, but I don't know. I just think I think Memphis is coming off a really tough loss, having to try to bounce back from that against what looks to be the best team in the league on the road in that team's first home game. Doesn't bode well for the Showboats, in my opinion.
I'm kind of in the same vein. I don't mean to throw this at you after post pick, but something else with the depth charts. Mark Gilbert will be inactive this week, so that is a downer. But I will say,
his wife gave birth to their baby, so I wasn't sure if he was going to play because I know he hasn't been practicing because of that. But that'll be a big loss to not have him. But also very happy for him and very excited that he's a good father and is being there for his wife and baby instead of a game.
Football can wait for some things, that is something I would say is pretty excusable to do. Much like how with DeMarcus Gates, got to get married, man. I mean, hey, I would say missing your wedding is probably not a good thing, or delaying it if you had it scheduled. That stuff's expensive, man. It costs money.
Yeah. For sure. The Stallions, they just need to do a better job planning out life events. You know what I mean? Like, we need to have the babies and the weddings in the off season.
Don't you realize we're going for a three-peat, guys?
That's
like,
right.
Can you give us some notice here? Oh, my goodness. But either way, with Gilbert not being available, my thing's going to be I think that they're going to challenge them to run on the Stallions, is my honest opinion, just because they haven't seen much. Darius Victor's status is questionable right now this week, so a little bit down on that personnel for the Showboats. And Case Cookus, I mean, look, I'll be frank with you. I thought that they were going to have better offensive line production. He still gets hit way too regularly every game. And he has to unfortunately play the hero way too much right now for the way the Showboats are designed. Especially last week with the Brahmas. Yes, they were great on offense, but it was Case Cookus with legs and extending plays. Even though he had a few ducks, like he was the main reason they got things going. Was he extended plays or was on the run? So I don't know if that's going to bode well. I've got Birmingham in this one. Honestly, it's going to be biggest margin of defeat this week to me. And yeah, give me like 24-13. 24-13. I think that's fine. I think it's going to be a struggle bus for the Showboats at times. And might reveal more flaws, especially on the front seven for that, or front five for that offensive line, which has really been getting bullied at times this year. They need to figure that out. Too much talent on that front five to be playing at the level they are playing right now. All right. This one, I'll be honest with you, Luke, third game of the week, Houston at Michigan. I'm nervous. I am actually nervous about this one. I thought going into the week that I was like, okay, get right game. Well, you know what? I don't know. I'm a little wary for recent developments. First things off, yes, EJ Perry has been very sporadic and very turnover prone, but EJ's not possibly going to be in. He's questionable right now. Supposedly a lingering ankle injury might affect his status for this game. We haven't gotten the depth charts for those games because that's Sunday, but something to keep in mind is, Danny Etling will have to come in. Now he's mobile, but I don't know if that's going to bode well. And I didn't like what I saw from Danny in one possession against Birmingham. So one possession doesn't define a quarterback, but that being said, it's not the guy they've been running with for 2 weeks. Secondly, Mark Thompson is, he's certainly implying that he's back. At least if I'm reading a vague tweet very well, he's seeming like he is. We haven't got the depth chart, but I'm going to roll with that he is, because usually he kind of spills the beans in a cryptic way, as you and I know, when it comes to his X account. So yeah, kind of freaking out a little bit, maybe. I don't know. Offense hasn't really shown consistency. Their defense is damn good, but that comes down to if they can adjust to Reed Sinnett and if they aren't going to give up opportunities. Your thoughts? I'm on the fanboy angle of this. So like I my fandom has always been Bears fandom wise, which is like, oh, the doom and gloom. I see the bad things in my team, and if they can exploit ABC, we'll take an L. What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, so if you go back and listen to my State of the Stallions episode that came out Thursday morning, I picked Michigan to win this game. But after thinking about it for 24 hours and seeing some of these developments as far as who's going to be available, who's not, I think I'm actually going to flip my pick. And the reason being, along the lines that you alluded to, I like Michigan's defense a lot. I'm high on them, but I'm not high on their offense. And the fact that they might potentially have Etling instead of Perry makes me even less so high on them. Like you mentioned, I wasn't impressed with what I saw out of Etling. I think he's a good quarterback and has potential. I mean, I thought he was a great signing by them, in the offseason and that sort of thing, but he didn't look great in the little bit of action that he got against the Stallions. And Houston has a great defense and a great front seven like the Stallions do.
It's a scary front seven. Good God.
Yeah.
It really is.
So, I mean, to try and sort of get your, first full potential game as a professional quarterback against that defense doesn't bode well for Michigan's offensive production in my mind. And then on the flip side, I actually really thought Houston's offense looked a lot better with Reed Sinnett at the helm. And I think that given that fact and given the fact that they might get Thompson back, again, I'm not super high on Houston's offense, but I actually think that they have the potential to maybe get some things figured out with a better rushing attack and with Sinnett's kind of playmaking ability that he flashed against DC. So,
Yeah.
I think initially I was a little bit higher on Michigan. I've been pretty down on Houston kind of since the beginning of the season, but I think the way things are trending, actually, I'm going to have to flip on this one and go with Houston, because I think they just that I like some of the moves that they've either been forced into making or been able to make heading into this week. And I don't know that I just can't trust Michigan to score more than, maybe 10 to 14 points. And I don't expect Houston to put up a ton of points, but I don't know if that's going to be enough to get it done.
I'm more concerned about, really, like I said, that front seven. And reason being, and I thought this was what they were going to do with when Birmingham came to town last week, and they did it to a T. And I think Houston's going to look at the playbook and say, well, if we just limit Wes Hills and keep him at bay, can we get to the backfield and can we throw off a quarterback that's back there? I think that's the game plan, because Wes Hills, like I said, that he is a star player, but their passing attack in Michigan has been sporadic. It has been chaotic. I don't know what to expect any play. Usually it's either it can be a 12-yard crossing route that converts for first down. It can be a ball in the dirt for all I know. And then in Michigan traditional fashion, the last 2+ years, it could be just like you're driving into goal to go situation, and the ball gets tipped and you throw a pick. And I don't trust enough right now with what's there. Personally, there are weapons, but they haven't been used or been getting targets as much. Jordan Sewell, MIA. I haven't really seen him really do anything. Cole Catini's really been the main guy they're throwing to right now. That to me has been the main contributor, but that's just, again, it's sporadic. Devin Ross, he was getting some catches last week on IR. Too bad. So I got to see who steps up is the deal. Houston, to me, has the more momentum. I think Reed Sinnett, I want to see if he benefited last week from not preparations for him, given that Guarantano's more mobile. Because one thing you do read up, and Luke, correct me if I'm wrong, how I've said this, but you hear a lot of coaches how a backup coming in can be kind of a monkey wrench in a defensive plan, because they don't always prep for the backup. So I do want to see if Mike Nolan, again, defensive mind, is going, okay, well, I know it's Reed, so let's prep for Reed. He's going to not be as mobile. He's going to be a pocket passer. So we got to prep for a pocket passer, which may be a better adjustment. Now, Mark Thompson's there. That's where you adjust with the pocket passer. If he's not there, I feel a bit better. But if Mark is there and he's applying it, that worries me, because he's a bruiser and he's good at hitting the holes, and he catches well out of the backfield too. That one freaks me out. I'm going to be different with you though. I'm leaning Michigan. Part homer pick, part because I think that defense can step up to the challenge. But this is my weakest pick of the week, is I don't trust this one much at all. I'm just more going on my heart right here. And I'm even going to make it a freaking field goal game. Give it like 17-14. It's going to be an ugly game. Two good defenses, I think. But 17-14, Jake Bates kicks it home for us.
There you go. Yeah. I'm kind of with you, just on the other way. I think it's going to be relatively low scoring, a lot of defense. I'm just, again, pretty low on the Michigan offense right now, and I think they got terrorized by Birmingham's front seven, and Houston's front seven is just as good. So I probably go with
Charlton, dude. I swear to God. And now it's, again, Chris Odom, Adam Rodriguez. Yep. They're going to send pressure with Reuben Foster and Sewell. That freaks me out, because I know that 7 sacks, it happened last week. It's not out of the realm of possibility again.
Yeah, Michigan's got their work cut out for them. And again, without throwing a new quarterback in there, who, unlike Sinnett, didn't sort of show flashes in his limited time last week. So I'm going to go with Houston in this one. Like I said, I'm flipping my pick. If you go back and listen to State of Stats, with Michigan, but given all these factors that we've discussed, I'm going to actually go with Houston. I'm going to say something like 18-12. I think Michigan just really struggles offensively to get on the board. Maybe gets a couple Jake Bates field goals, but I don't know if they sniff the end zone. And I think Houston, again, with Mark back potentially, and maybe a little bit more of a rushing attack. I think they get a big play or two here or there, sneak behind the Michigan defense, and get just enough points to pull out the win.
By the way, go check out that last episode, Stay the Stallions, by the way. Great way to get yourself prepped for the weekend ahead with this show and the other one. So 3 different viewing personalities all across. And you get to see how Luke has melded his pick as the days have gone by.
That's right.
It's kind of get
And you get to hear
shopping.
This week I had, the legendary James Larson on there, so it's always fun to hear from him.
Always a good pickup, dude. Yeah, absolutely. Definitely want to listen to James, freaking Adam Schefter of the UFL, man.
That's right.
Why would you want to miss out on a conversation like that? I ask you all out there in the audience. Anyhow, final game of the week. This is what all of us have been waiting for. And I think this is the definitive game of the week because it is really the top 2 in the XFL conference. And at least to me, this is the game that will be, I know I'm a stickler here. It's going to put me over the top if I believe San Antonio is a pretender or contender. I know they've won 2-0, and I know there's a lot of hype around the Brahmas. I haven't fully sold personally. I have not bought a ticket into the hype train yet because I still see certain things. Now, this one, I'll admit, I think it'll be a fun game. I think St. Louis, they had a close loss against my Panthers, had a really gritty win against the Renegades. It's been close all week. Now, can they get back to what they were last season and be more of I think imposing and high power offense, much like week 2? That's what I'm wondering. And I felt there were good signs last week with that. Finding Durant as your running back option, that was one that was a good solution. Aitman continues to be a defining presence as a receiving option right now with Ja'Cour Pearson not playing and no one else really, I would say, being the true up-to-snuff receiver number 1 for St. Louis. I think that's fascinating. I think it's going to challenge Wade Phillips' defense even more so than it has in the last 2 weeks. On the other side, does A.J. Smith make enough adjustments early so that he doesn't get behind the 8 ball as a coordinator and play caller? Because that definitely burned them last week, and I'm telling you, Luke, I keep saying this. When teams play zone, Chase Garbers has a hard time reading zone. And I know people say, but he threw for 300 yards. Yes, he did. But if you watch that tape, Carnell Lake switches his defensive play calls late in the 3rd quarter and plays right into the hands of the Brahmas. I'm telling you, it's something I've been wanting to see. Can they figure out that type of defense? If he can't get the 1st or 2nd read and pressure gets to him, can he keep on doing that? Maybe I'm being a little picky, Luke. I want to hear what you think, but I've been doubting, I guess. I have to be the one voice in the room, I guess, that's doubting. I have no idea. Maybe call me a hater or something. I haven't bought it yet. I haven't seen it yet. Maybe I'm the crazy one.
Well, you brought the wrong guest on the show this week if you wanted a foil, because I'm totally on the hater train too. And
interesting. I was wondering if you would say the others, because it seems like everyone at ATU thinks differently. And I was like, okay, well, here we go. But okay, yeah, I'm hearing your things too. What are you with me on? That's the thing.
Yeah, so I think we're definitely in the minority. There's no doubt about that. But I'm not sold on the Brahmas yet. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying they're a bad team. I probably expect them to be in the playoffs.
My finger, kind of if I'm buying a ticket, my finger's like touching the button to press to purchase ticket. This is the week I need to see, because it's a true top contender. That's the thing.
Right.
And plus, yeah, you go.
I mean,
I can keep
in
going,
my opinion, in my opinion, the majority of football they've played has been bad. Like, they did not look good in the second half against the Defenders. They scored 1 touchdown because they got like a 90-yard interception return down inside the 5 and were able to punch it in. And credit to their defense for making that play, but otherwise they couldn't do anything against DC in the second half. And they came very close to giving that game away. If DC hadn't had a guy spitting in other people's faces, they might have won that game. So there's that. And then, I mean, I know everybody was really excited about their come from behind win last week, and that was impressive. Again, I don't want to, take away from what they were able to do in that final quarter.
Of course not, yeah.
But they looked terrible. They looked terrible for 3 quarters of football, really almost 3.5. Like, they could not get a first down on offense. Like you said, Carnell Lake totally shut down A.J. Smith's offense for the majority of the game. Their defense, again, to their credit, was able to keep Memphis out of the end zone, but Memphis was driving the ball, controlling the time of possession. I mean, Memphis was in control of that game. There's really no reason Memphis shouldn't have lost, other than the fact that they just totally blew it at the end. And San Antonio made some plays, but you put all that together, That's about 5 quarters of football that they've played that have been ugly, and they've gotten outplayed, in my opinion. It's really only come down to about 3, so less than half of the football they've played, where they've looked like a really solid championship team, in my opinion. And I think this week they have the potential to get exposed, because I think St. Louis is a good team. They're coming off a big win at home with a great crowd, and a tough game against Arlington. So I think they're starting to build a little bit of momentum, a little bit of mojo. Like you mentioned, they found a running back, it looks like. McCarron's starting to kind of get into sort of some synergy and kind of in sync with Aitman and these other receivers that they've got. And, I think St. Louis is a really good team. I think San Antonio is a good team too, but I don't think San Antonio can get away with, going into week 3 of the season, get away with the kind of football they've been playing the first couple games and still come out with a victory. So I'm still not on the San Antonio hype train yet. If they win this week, especially if they win in a sort of decisive fashion, then I'll change my tune, and they can convince me from get off the skeptic sort of doubter train. But I'm still on the yet to be convinced in that boat with you, based on what I've seen in terms of their entire body of work.
Yeah, look, wins do matter, of course, but this is where we get into like this is like almost power ranking discussion, as we've talked about. It's like, we see this in the NFL. You have those teams where it's like, yeah, wins, but are you really that good? That type of talk. That's where I'm at. Like you're talking. So this week, this is kind of the one final test for like my personal opinions, where I'm like, okay, they pull off a win this week, they are legit. There's no more defending anything, but yes, there have been scenarios last 2 weeks where I'm sitting here going, I don't know, dude. I'm telling you, any 1 or 2 plays go a different way. This is a different record for this squad. So we'll see. Now, St. Louis, I think they also have stuff to answer for, because
For sure.
again, close wins. I think that this is a team that's been playing underneath its expectations in a lot of ways. Now, last week, though, offense, like we talked, did click. They did find personnel. I do want to see, is Durant a one-hit wonder because it's the Renegades defense? Remember, worst defense in the league overall and worst rushing defense. Or is that the solution over Wayne Gallman? Because it seemed like he gave much better a spark and was hitting the holes much more precision-wise than a Wayne Gallman was in week 1, which is something you want to see. The Brahmas do have a much better rush defense under Wade Phillips. Phillips is going to challenge that front 5 of the Battlehawks and is going to provide pressure. Can AJ McCarron stay up enough to find holes in that secondary? Which that's my worry with the Brahmas. I've seen in the 2 weeks that I have watched them play, specifically last week, there are openings in the secondary with this Brahmas defense that do worry me, if there's any bit better of an offensive game plan and execution in goal-to-go scenarios. That's going to be the talk, is that the Brahmas secondary is the problem. So, and as we've talked, Cameron Dantzler kind of being brought in because that is the main problem right now. So can the Battlehawks execute, main thing, and finish drives, something that both DC and Memphis have not been able to do, and San Antonio's been able to stop? And for San Antonio's sake, like I said, can you get to a faster start, and can you stay and change and adapt with the game plan a bit better? That's the thing. They've won 2 games, but adaptability has either come thanks to let's face it, it's either they've stuck with a game plan or the other side has adapted out of a game plan and basically let them slip back in, is how I view it. I don't want to give my prediction yet, because I'm curious what you think. Because I think this it'll come down to the wire, another down to the wire game, because I don't see St. Louis blowing a team out right now either.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think it's a close game. I think it's an exciting game. I do think this is sort of the game of the week. And, one thing we haven't mentioned too is that, St. Louis has got a lot at stake in this game, because if you lose and you fall to 1-2 while San Antonio jumps out to 3-0 in terms of the conference, again, that's not a great place to be.
No.
And so it's a similar situation with Memphis and Birmingham. Like, Memphis has got a lot at stake too. They really, it's going to be tough, but they really need a win if possible. Otherwise, they're going to quickly develop a gap between them and Birmingham in terms of the conference standings. So I don't know. I think St. Louis has got a lot to play for. And, again, everybody's just going to think I'm a hater, but I'm just not convinced yet that Garber's is as good as, maybe some of his numbers and things would lead you to believe. I think, I don't think that again, a defense sort of schemes well for AJ Smith's offense, he is capable of just sort of, again, putting the team on his back, like I think AJ McCarron is maybe capable of, right? Like, I mean, I think AJ is that good that, he can kind of find a way to make things happen. I think Garbers is more product of the system. And again, maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe he's going to prove me wrong this weekend. But given the fact that I like McCarron overall a little bit more than Garbers, given the fact that I think St. Louis is coming off a big win and bringing that momentum with them into this game, given the fact that I think San Antonio should have lost last week and arguably was in a position to lose in the first week and has sort of kept kind of like living on the edge and bailing themselves out, I don't think they're able to do it again. So all that to say, I'm going to go with St. Louis in this one. I do, again, think it's a close game. I think it's an exciting game. As far as score, I mean, I think actually we might see a little bit more fireworks in this one. I'm going to go with something like, maybe 30-27. I think it's a little bit on the higher scoring end because I do think these are two good offenses. And I think
our first 30 burger there, you think?
That's right. Yeah.
Right,
I mean, okay. I think what we might see is similar to a couple of other games St. Louis has been in. We might get off to a slower start, but I think that at some point in the game, I think these offenses start clicking and then we start maybe seeing them go blow for blow. But I think St. Louis pulls it out. I think the San Antonio hype train loses some steam, and maybe I'll have to eat my words, but that's where I'm at.
We'll find out. It's two of the top three offenses in the UFL. St. Louis 2, San Antonio 3 overall. I do believe it's going to be up there. I still am going to hold that. I think the first game of the week is going to be the highest scoring just based on the defenses being weak, but this one definitely will be up there as one that you're going to be like, oh yes, it's going to be back and forth a little bit. And I'm going to go with St. Louis. This will be this will be just, again, similar feel. Now, again, San Antonio wins this week. Well, I'm fully on the train. I bought the ticket. I'll even buy the VIP access pass, and we'll go and talk with other guys on our side, like James and Nick Thorne, who are definitely on that train all the way at the front of the luxury cabin. So yeah, we'll talk about that. But for now, I got the Battlehawks. Give me a similar 3-point game. I think it's going to come down similar score actually last week that St. Louis had, 27-24. I think that's going to be pretty well round number. Whoever has the ball last is going to be the case. And we'll find out, honestly, should be an entertaining one. And again, I think it's that's the true, honestly, one of the main contender games of the weekend out of several of those type of category games for this weekend. Luke, I think that's about all we got. Anything else you want to add before we go, man? I mean, you and I have had a great long show together. It's good to have a nice discussion with you, dude.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on. It's been a lot of fun for sure. And I know I couldn't bring that same ref 12-0 Houston energy, but sometimes people might need a break from that. So hopefully I could provide them with that. And I think we got a great slate of games coming up this weekend. So looking forward to see what happens.
Look, I'm if anything, I'm gearing up for what might lie ahead next week if there is a Houston win, because I know how this works, so don't worry. I'm glad to have you on for that buffer. Stefan is, or the ref. You guys know, full disclosure, who listens to the name either way, but he'll be back next week. Don't worry. Life happens is what we're saying. There's a busyness to it. Luke, thank you for joining on. And guys, be sure to follow along with Luke's content at Stay the Stallions, SOT Stallions, on your social media platforms. Does some great stuff, not only for his podcast, but puts out tons of content on those platforms for stories, for updates on the Stallions and other things going on with the Birmingham sports scene as well. He's a huge Birmingham sports fan and a Stallions fan, even more so, if I had to put it out there. But give him a follow. He definitely deserves it. And he's a really good guy you want to stick around with for content. And part of the top 5 podcasts UFL-wise on Stevie T's list. You can't leave that accolade out. That is the biggest accolade right now in this scene, is Stevie T's top UFL podcast list. It's an unforgettable one. And all 3 of our shows, top 5 right now. 2 of them, top 2. One of them, this one, number 1. Just keep that in mind if you're ever looking for a list of good shows to listen to. Anyway, he's Luke Miller. I'm Zach Kyleman. Enjoy week 3. Catch you on the other side for ATU Monday, 6 p.m. Eastern time. 3 p.m. Pacific, live on this channel for all things recapping the past week and reactions for the past week as well. And maybe both of us are reading our words on that Brahmas pick. Who knows? We'll be finding out very soon after a few days. But yeah, catch us on all of our platforms. We'll see you in the next one for episode 83, and keep enjoying the UFL.